Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. You're looking great.
This is the podcast where inspiring leaders share their stories to empower you, unlock your potential, and create a winning mindset for your future. My name is Luke Murfitt, the UK Entrepreneur of the Year, and my co-host is thought leader Kim Adele. Welcome to Global Futurists. Good morning and welcome to Global Futurists. My name is Luke Murfitt and Kim Adele. Good morning, Kim Adele.
Morning, how are you?
Excellent, thank you. Really good. This is the future of business. Where are we? Where are we going? And we have the wonderful VIP visitor, guest, Yvonne Thompson. Yvonne, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Luke. How are you both doing?
Really well, thank you. And how are you?
Yeah, good. Considering.
It's certainly unprecedented times, isn't it?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, this is going to be a great broadcast, a great show. We're really excited to hear more about what you can offer and what we can talk about. Over to you, Kim Adele.
Okay, so I have the absolute honour of introducing the fabulous Dr. Yvonne Thompson, who is a game changer campaigner activist with over 33 years experience in communications, marketing and PR, and specifically championing equality, diversity and inclusion in the workplace, which is so critical now more than ever. And has also been honoured by Queen Elizabeth and written a leadership book on the 7 traits of highly successful women on the board. So I'm delighted to have you on the show with Dr. Yvonne. And if you could please share with us a bit of your journey, we would really appreciate it.
Oh, wow. So what an amazing introduction. Thank you very much. You've told it all. I don't need to say anything else. You've done my interview for me. So thank you both very much for giving me the opportunity of sharing my story, my life, my journey with you and your audience. As you said, Kim, I started my entrepreneurial journey, and I don't call it a business. I call it my passion. I started my entrepreneurial passion over 35 years ago now. Sorry, I should have updated my bio a little bit more. So I'm basically, I started, where did I start my journey? I'm originally from Guyana, South America. I don't know how far back you want to go, but I'm originally from Guyana, South America. My parents were invited over, or they thought they were invited over by the Queen to come and rebuild the motherland. So at her invitation, they picked up their 6 children and travelled across the world to arrive in the UK, expecting that they would be welcomed with open armed, red carpets, pavement paved with gold, or streets paved with gold and all of that, to arrive, of course, to probably the biggest shock in their life. First and foremost, they were not welcomed, but they were here, or we were all here. And it is one of those stories where we literally arrived with 1 suitcase each, all our belongings in 1 suitcase each. So there were 8 of us. And for my parents, I think the other burden they carried was what we call a backpack of dreams, one for each of their kids, of what life could be in the UK. And their very first task was to find somewhere for 8 people to live.
Wow.
Back in the early 60s, it was still legal for landlords to have notices on their doors that said, maybe you'll be able to help me with this. Are either of you old enough to help me with this? Probably not. The notices said, no dogs, no Irish, no blacks.
Oh.
Wow.
So, those notices were still legal. But my parents found a 2-bedroom, not 2-bedroom, 2 rooms basement flat in Battersea, right under the power station that was still live at the time. And there we lived for about 9 years until they were able to save up enough money to move on. We were in one of the worst streets in one of the worst areas of London. And my mum worked 3 part-time jobs. My dad was a plumber's mate at St. Thomas's Hospital, even though when he left Guyana, he was actually he was in the police force. I can't remember what level, but he took a downgrade because he had to feed 8 people basically. So as I said, we lived there for the longest while. That part of my journey would take forever, so I'm not going to go through. I just wanted you to know where the beginnings are. But what I do say when I do these talks, if only I knew then what I know about property value now, because where we are, you know, or where we were, we could not afford to live there now, ever. I mean, the prices in Battersea are ridiculous. But if I knew then, I would have squatted. Anyway, needless to say, the street was so bad, it's been demolished. But I think there's a new gated community there, but the whole place has been demolished. But moving swiftly on, you know, went through the usual challenges of racism at school, at college, the usual things. But I think where it really hit home was when I got my first permanent job, which was at CBS Records. I was there for 7.5 years, and in that time, you know, even though I subbed for a position or stood in for a position while someone was ill or the position was vacant, I never did get that position. And so I decided the only way for me to move up was to move out. So after being there for 7.5 years, I realized my situation. I had a triple whammy. First, I was female. Second, I was a black female. Third, I was a single black female with a child, single parent. And if you like, there was a fourth because, you know, back then, as it still is now, the music industry are not kind to women or minorities. So I think that's where I really got my kind of challenge and my started to build my resilience. So I started my own business. As soon as I started my own business, I loved it. I found it was, you know, what I was meant to do. I was never meant to work for somebody else. So for me, I've enjoyed every challenge. I've enjoyed every up, every down, every success, every failure. I don't look at failures as failures. I look at it as an opportunity to learn and do better next time. And with every no, for me, no stands for next one, not give up. So, you know, there's all those things that just kept me going. I went on to start many firsts in the Black community. I started the first Black-owned PR company as far as PR Week is concerned, and that's the Industry Bible. I started, or as part of a group that started the first Black monthly glossy magazine many years ago. And that same group went on to start the first Black music radio station, which was called Choice FM. And Choice FM is now known as Capital Extra. It's part of the global network. So many firsts. And through that, being part of a radio station, I also started the first Black Women in Business network. Because I found, when I was starting my own business, I couldn't find anybody who looked like me, apart from being female. There's just 50% of me there. So I was invited to lots of women in business networks, events, and so on and so forth. But, quite honestly, most of the time, the majority, I would say 99.9% of the time, I was the only woman of colour there, or the only person of colour there. So I thought I needed to change that, and I started my own network, which has been going now for 23 years. This is the 23rd year. We've changed that, we've expanded that, because I think we've moved quite a long way. So I think we almost have to go back to basics, where women are women, not divided into race, sexuality, or anything else. Because I feel the only way for people to learn about each other, the culture, the mindsets, the challenges, all the things that you have as a woman, be you black, white, yellow, whatever, the only way that we learn from each other is for us all to be in the same room. We have to be in the same room at the same table, hearing the same things at the same time. So that's where I am. I do a lot of work in the equality and diversity field. It's become, another one of my passions. I've been campaigning for, a very long time, as long as I've been in business, and championing women in business. And as you mentioned earlier, Kim, I received a CBE, Commander of the British Empire, by the Queen for my work that I've done in the equality, diversity and inclusion space. I've written a book on women in business, and it talks about the challenges, the tips, the tricks, the traits, the things you need to know to get yourself on a board and stay on that board. It's not just about getting there, it's about staying there. And as I say, equality is about having access to that room, or diversity is having access to the room, equality is having a chair at the table, and inclusion is having your voice heard. So those are the things that I really push for, and will champion until I die.
Yvonne, very interesting to hear sort of the background of what got you to where you are. What hurdles have you faced, and how have you overcome them?
Well, as I said earlier, a lot of the times it was quite difficult being the only woman of colour doing the things that I'm doing, or the only person of colour that I knew doing the things that I'm doing. And for me, I felt that one of the ways, it's the same as the campaigns that are going on right now for women on boards. We have to campaign, we have to give access, and there has to be more than one person, whether it, person of color or one person, one woman on a board. You can't just say, yeah, we've got our quota now, we've got one of you on board, because you need to have at least a third, or at least 3 people of gender and race on a board, because if that person is the only person that's there, it's never going to change. Their voice won't be heard, then it's never going to change. Fantastic. So what I've done, how I've got over it, is basically doing the campaigning, opening up opportunities for other women. So for instance, right now I also chair the Radio Academy, which is the UK's charity for radio stations. And, I kind of burst into there. It was, well, first of all, it's been going for 39 years. And they've had 3 women chairs, and they've never had a person of colour that was a chair. So, of course, I know I was in for a rough ride. So I burst into there, and my maiden speech was entitled "Diversify or Die." The radio industry has to diversify or die, and that's both behind and in front of the microphone. And I think it's the same for most organisations. And I think that's particularly pertinent now with the times we're living in. We're living in lockdown. Currently, this interview, we're practicing physical distancing, but thank heavens we're not practicing social distancing at the moment. We, for diverse communities, this is going to be a very pivotal time, not only for the communities, but also for business, because there's going to be a lot of people from diverse backgrounds who are not going to be able to go and do the kind of menial jobs that tend to be where minorities are. They're going to become more creative, and I hope they're going to pick up on the opportunity to take their own destiny, their financial destiny, in their own hands. I'm not saying everybody should leave their job. I mean, even though I did, I'm not advocating everybody should leave their job and do their own thing. But you know, out of these challenges come opportunities. You know, we were talking about it before, and there will be opportunity for good. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for good, but there will also be opportunities for bad, and we have to really focus on the positive rather than the negative.
No, completely.
Did I answer your question?
It did. Thank you. And you're so right. There is sadly going to be some opportunity for people to behave poorly, but as we discussed earlier, there are so many examples of people behaving with real human kindness that it just gives you hope, doesn't it? And I think that's what we've got to cling on to, particularly in unprecedented times like this. So you've had an amazing journey that you've shared some of already. If you had to go back and do it again, is there anything you would have done differently?
It's always a difficult question. I mean, there is one thing that I probably would have done differently. Now, people ask me, do you regret having your daughter at the age you did? Because I had my daughter when I was 19. At that time, it was very unfashionable to be a teenage mum. I was the only teenage mum at the school gates, you know, and but in so many ways it was good for me, because right now my daughter is 45, and I've got 2 grandchildren, and I'm still alive and healthy and mentally well and physically well to enjoy them. So that is not the thing I would have done differently. I may have done, but I'm glad that I didn't. The only thing I think would be the level of education. Yes, I've got 2 doctorates, but they're honorary doctorates because of the work that I've done. But at the time I was in education, in full-time education, university wasn't as accessible to all as it is now. And that's probably the only thing that I regret. I think if I had a university education, my trajectory might have been faster. I might have got here a lot earlier. But, you know, I'm not complaining. And I'm one of these people, I enjoy learning. So I am one of these lifelong learners. So I'm always interested. But apart from the educational piece, I think that's the only thing that I've really, the one thing I would say that I've regretted.
Yvonne, yeah, you mentioned you love learning things. What are some of the lessons that you have learned over?
Well, my biggest lesson, I think, is, it sounds really bad, but don't rely on anybody else. Rely on yourself. You're the only person you can rely on. You are responsible for all of your decisions. Even if you get advice from someone, if you take that advice from someone and it doesn't work, you are responsible for taking the advice. So, you know, be responsible, take responsibility for everything that you do. I would also say you have to build up your resilience. Well, for me, and it doesn't apply to everybody, but for me, you've got to build up your resilience. You've got to learn how to build up your resilience. And I think that, you know, that was just inbred from that's a lesson I learned from my parents, more my mother, resilience. And you really have to, whatever you do, you have to lead. You have to lead with emotional intelligence. I think we're moving more towards that whole, rather than regimental and such disciplinary way of leadership, more about thinking about the person and the people that you work with and the people that you're leading. So for me, emotional intelligence is a real big part of what I do.
Fantastic, and so true. In fact, it's in the World Economics Forum top 10 skills that are needed by 2022. And beyond, they're moving towards needing to lead with humanity and presence, which clearly you already do, and you've shared with us so far already. Thinking about diversity and inclusion, what would you say is the most critical thing for businesses to think about to be successful in achieving that equality, inclusivity and diversity?
Well, I think it depends on the business, of course, but a lot of businesses in general, businesses have to be more open-minded. You have to be more culturally aware. You have to just think about diversity in the round, whether it's cultural, whether it's creative, whether it's thought, presence, as I said, a lot of emotional intelligence. You have to think about how, rather than thinking about looking at people to fit your business, think about how what kind of people your business you can fit into your business, if that makes sense. So it's almost the other way around. So you have to think about your audience and think about the talent pipeline. And because there's so many people now that are just so talented and not being utilized. I think the companies have to work harder to understand who is out there and who can fit into their business.
Great point.
Does that make sense?
No, it make total sense, and I completely agree. I think there's so much diversity now, and also with things like neurodiversity and things, just making sure that we are including everybody, because those unique perspectives together we're stronger, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that, Yvonne. What would be your top 3 tips, I guess, for the listeners around the world, going through challenges right now, whether it's in business or lockdown or whatever? What would be the three takeaways that you'd like people to remember, to take on board, and to try and impress on other people?
Do you mean apart from, for this very moment in time, apart from stay well, stay healthy, and stay in?
Stay well.
So 3 top tips for businesses. I think we just have to keep, as your program is called, we have to keep thinking about the future. We have to, we have to keep thinking ahead of the times wherever that's possible, because like now, who was really expecting this? We got so caught out with this coronavirus, and especially as a country, I think we got very much caught out in the moment. So yeah, I think we have to keep thinking ahead. But I think companies have to think very much about equality, diversity, and inclusion. The more we can include, the more people we can include, the more diversity, as I said before, more creative, more cultural, more influential diversity we'll have. And my third tip, what is my third tip? That's a difficult one.
How about something personal?
Oh.
Something that people as individuals can improve their character.
I think as individuals, we've just got to keep an open mind. We have to keep open minds. We cannot, we cannot be biased. We have to keep an open mind.
Brilliant. They're great. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, the more open-minded we can be, and the more comfortable we are to learn new things and to go in there without any preconceived ideas. And I think some of the challenges, we unfortunately all have some unconscious bias, and that can be the more difficult one to get past, can't it? Because you don't know it's there. But I think if we keep learning and we keep talking to each other, then we stand a chance of really having an amazing society.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Yvonne Thompson, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you, to hear you, and to take on board the importance of equality, diversity, and inclusion. And you know, we salute you with all your achievements, and I'm sure people will be looking up, you know, what you've done in the past, including obviously your book, 7 Traits of Highly Successful Women on Board. Yeah. And thank you for that, for your time. And Kim Adele, have you got any?
I'd just like to say thank you so much. As always, it's been an inspiration talking to you. You've had an amazing journey, and I think sharing your personal resilience and your drive to go and help do more for others is, well, it is just inspiring. So thank you so much for giving us your time this morning. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Luke.
Thanks, Yvonne. Take care. This is Luke Murfitt and Kim Adele on Global Futurists. Thank you, and join us again very soon. This is the podcast where inspiring leaders share their stories to empower you, unlock your potential, and create a winning mindset for your future.